Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So, we will start the webinar. I request Mr. Kanagaraj to introduce our guest speaker today.
Yeah, thank you, Suman. Hi, hello everyone. I would like to welcome you all for our today's webinar. It is on ocular pharmacology. So our chief guest is from Aravind Medical Research Foundation, Madurai, Dr. Senthil Kumari. So before I would request her to talk, I will have a few words about her. She has received her bachelor's degree from Dr. MGR Medical University, Chennai. It is specialized in pharmaceutical sciences, and her master's degree from BITS Misra, Ranchi in 2001, specialized in pharmaceutical chemistry. Also, she has received her PhD degree from Dr. Rajendra Prasad Center for Ophthalmic Sciences, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. And then she joined in Aravind Medical Research Foundation in 2008. Her research interest is on understanding the molecular mechanisms involved in the pathogenesis and identifying drug targets for the silent site killer glaucoma, especially POAG and steroid-induced glaucoma. Through DBT Crest Award, she has received an extensive training and hands-on experience on organ cultured anterior segment at Dr. Kaufman's lab, University of Wisconsin, Madison, USA. And she established the human organ cultured anterior segment facility at Aravind, Madurai. The ex vivo model system is the first of its kind in India, which is utilized to determine the trabecular meshwork outflow facility responses to investigational drugs. She has received several fundings from Government of India, including DST Young Scientist Award, DBT, ICMR, and SERB for various projects. Dr. Senthil Kumari has been recently awarded the DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance Intermediate Fellowship Award for the project on microRNA role in steroid glaucoma. She has published around 25 research articles in national and international peer-reviewed journals and co-authored 4 book chapters. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I would like to I would like madam to start the session. Please, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Kanagaraj. Hello, everyone. Greetings for the day from Aravind Medical Research Foundation. So able to see my slides?
Not yet, ma'am.
Not yet. Now?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. This is okay now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank the AG Instruments for giving me this opportunity to share my research experiences with you all. And secondly, the participants who had showed interest in listening to my talk, though the topic is very confined to ocular pharmacology. So before starting into it, so the title of my talk today is on this organ cultured anterior segment ex vivo model system in glaucoma research. This is the organ system, ex vivo system, which we have been using it for the past 11 years for our research, especially the glaucoma research. Before taking you to the topic, I would like to give a brief outline about what is about the glaucoma. This is mainly for the participants who don't have the background in ophthalmology. So the glaucoma is a neurodegenerative disorder characterized by optic nerve damage leading to vision loss. This is the second leading cause of the permanent blindness worldwide after cataract. So in glaucoma, The only modifiable risk factor is the elevated IOP, which results from the resistance or the diminished or the obstructed flow of aqueous humor from the eye. This results in elevated IOP, that which is more than the normal IOP of the normal eye is 21 mmHg. If it exits above 21 mmHg, that is called the elevated IOP, that is called glaucoma. Because of this high IOP in the person experiencing the front portion of the eye, it will affect the posterior, like the back side of the eye, where you have the optic nerve and the RGC cells, which is the relay cells which transmits the information to the brain. So due to high pressure, in due course, if the treatment is not initiated, it will result in optic nerve damage and finally the permanent vision loss. That's why the glaucoma is a very it has to be addressed or it has to be managed at the right time with the right drug. So if you could see the percentage of glaucoma in the like a prevalence, so you could see this 57.5 million affected globally as of now, this 2020, but it can increase to like 65 million 2020, but it has doubled actually, 111 for 11 like 15 million around is expected in 2040 actually. So the number is so alarming. So this is the basic structure in order to understand what is glaucoma about it. So that's why I have given this for a very brief introduction. These are the structures which are related to glaucoma. You could see the structure of the eye, in which you can have like an anterior segment and the posterior segment. And this is the region which is of our interest related to glaucoma, that is magnified here. So you know that there are two liquids present in the eye. The anterior side, you have the aqueous humor, and the posterior side, you have the vitreous humor. That is the front side of the eye and the back side of the eye. So vitreous humor is once it is formed, then it is maintained throughout your life, and it is not dynamic. So it cannot be synthesized as and when required. But in case of aqueous humor, the drainage, the formation as well as the drainage happens dynamically. That's how the IOP homeostasis is maintained inside the eye. So the aqueous humor is like it has to supply the nutrients to the avascular tissues like the cornea and lens. And here you could see the pathway of aqueous humor. So once it is formed in the posterior chamber, it travels through this pupil and it nourishes the lens and the cornea, as I said earlier, and drainage into the episcleral vein, that is the systemic circulation. But here I have marked 1 and 2, that is the pathway which the aqueous humor takes to drain into the systemic circulation. The first one is the conventional outflow, that is through the trabecular meshwork. The majority of the aqueous humor happens through this pathway. And the second pathway is the uveoscleral pathway, that is the second, that is through the paracellular spaces, that is the spaces between the sclera. So as far as the treatment is concerned, you have only the anti-glaucoma drugs, but it either acts by decreasing the aqueous humor formation or increase the aqueous outflow, especially the uveoscleral pathway. But it is not only sufficient to reduce the IOP. For an ideal anti-glaucoma drugs, you need drug with both activity, like reduce the elevated IOP as well as it should offer the neuroprotection, because we have seen that because of the elevated IOP, you will end up in neurodegeneration. So the treatment should cover both this elevated IOP as well as the neurodegeneration. But at present, you don't have any, as of now, there are no like very few, like brimonidine, only very few compounds are available, like rho kinase inhibitors. So very few compounds offer such protection against neurodegeneration. So in order to understand the pathogenesis, but the pathogenesis is still very unclear, and glaucoma is a multifactorial. So there are so many theories has been put forward for understanding the pathogenesis of a glaucoma, and you have two types of a glaucoma. One is primary open angle glaucoma and primary closure angle glaucoma. These are the two, and the secondary glaucoma is the glaucoma associated with either drug or some treatment associated glaucoma. Also, there is obstruction. If there is any obstruction in the trabecular measure, that will also result in the elevated IOP, that is called secondary glaucoma, pseudo exfoliation, like that. So in order to understand the pathogenesis, you need some suitable experimental model so that you can identify or you can discover the new drugs or understand the pathogenesis of a glaucoma or to identify the newer drug targets. Therefore, the animal models are in place. But as far as you look into the animal models of a glaucoma, either you have models where you can they study the IOP related responses, or this is a neurodegeneration, but you cannot have the animal system which can recapitulate the signs of a glaucoma, human glaucoma. That's why, and moreover, the animal models they are very costly and time consuming, but it cannot tell the pathogenesis or understanding at the cellular level. So in the place of animal models, they have like the in vitro and ex vivo. This has been replaced with the in vitro and ex vivo models, and moreover, the in vitro and ex vivo models are easy to run the experiments and very useful tool to assess the response of individual cell population. Like suppose if you want to see some responses at the trabecular meshwork level, you can isolate the culture, isolate the cells, and you do the cultures, and you can test any drug or any compost which have the potential to have something biochemical changes related in the trabecular meshwork. Or in case of RGCs, the retinal ganglion cell, which is present in the optic nerve, if you want to study the neurotoxicity or like a glutamine associated glutotoxicity, then you can isolate the RGCs from optic nerve and you can study in isolation. Therefore, here the organ perfusion culture offers an excellent platform to study like you have the intermediate between the animal model as well as the cell culture model, and moreover the system is dynamic in nature, so you can keep the tissues alive. So here you have some, I have put up some of the in vitro models which we usually run it for our system, that is the only elevated hydrostatic pressure or the RGC degeneration model. So where you can TM cell cultures or retinal ganglion cells or the astrocytes that you can isolate from the optic nerve, and here the retinal explants, so you can remove the retina and put it in culture from either mouse or human, whatever the tissues available. Then you can initiate some toxic or toxic with the treat with the toxicants, and then you can study the biochemical changes and things like that with the system. But the organ perfusion is usually run it with the whole eye or the anterior segment. So you can bisect the eye and you can isolate the anterior segment and put them in culture as like the ordinary culture cells, where you can culture in the COG incubator, and you can run it and you can see the IOP continuously, monitor the pressure continuously, and you can see the changes in response to drug or the any insult or the biochemical mechanical stress, like that. So you must have wondered, like the title P/B/M/M/H. So this is nothing but the species which I have given it for the organ culture. The organ cultured anterior segment can be run with the different species. There is P stands for porcine, and B stands for bovine, M stands for monkey, and H stands for human eyes. So it was originally developed by Johnson et al. From Mayo Clinic, 1987. So it offers the opportunity to study physiology, biochemistry, and morphology of the outflow system for a number of days in viable tissues. Because since it is a dynamic system and it is perfused and keep the tissues alive with the nutrient medium, so this can be studied up to 1 month, and even 1 month also the viability is still preserved in the in the perfusion culture. So this is an added advantage. So you can run through the experiment over the period of time, and you can study the morphological and biochemical integrity of the outflow tissue for about 1 month. And it is also have the potential to study any gene therapy or the cell-based therapy, which could easily target the trabecular meshwork outflow. The TM stands for trabecular meshwork outflow. So this is the Petri dish where you can have the this is the specially designed Petri dish. You can have it for the different species. The dimension of the Petri dish varies with the species. So this is we have used it for the human. So it has been fabricated with the human eye dimensions, so that once you mount the anterior segment, you will mimic the anterior segment physiology. This is how the outflow facility happens, the aqueous humor and facility happens. This is how you maintain it in the Petri dish. So the very first time I have got it trained, as Kanagaraj mentioned, I have got a training from Dr. Kaufman's lab. So there they have given me training on the monkey eyes. So if they use the monkey eyes, then it is called MOCAS. So here, this is the system where I have first worked with. So this is little messy in thing. So here you could see the quad amplifier, and this is the computer where they used to record the readings. And here this is the incubator where you can keep the culture dishes with the eyes, and these are the pressure transducers. And here there is a pressure gauge strain, something which we have a lot more modifications. We are using it now, but in the very first time I have given a training on this system. This was the first time I happened to see such a kind of experimental setup for the organ culture anterior segment using the monkey eyes. So here they have used the pressure transducers from the Harvard apparatus. So they have, that was the first time in 90s they have set up this lab. So they have, that time that the data acquisition was not that much very popular. So they have a custom made from the LabVIEW software from the National Instruments, Texas. So this is the system. So this is the photograph in which this was taken during my training at Kaufman Lab. So this typically this organ culture anterior, the dissection is the very key for the success of this experiment. This is how the eyeball has to be processed. So once you get the whole globe, then it has to be washed with the betadine followed by sterile PBS. So then you have to so for this experiment you need a lot of patience, and the circumferentially you have to score it to bisect. That is the score which you do. This dissection has to happen in the magnifier, because the structures are very tiny. So you have to, you should not disturb the other structures. So with a lot of patience under this magnifier, then you have to do all this thing. But for the human eyes, it is little bit okay. But for MOCAS, you need magnifier, and do the, once you get practiced, then you will be better off to dissect the anterior segment. So this is how the process takes. Then at least it takes 1 to 2 hours to dissect out the anterior segment without disturbing the other structures. Because in this step, this is very crucial, because once you disturb the structure, then your success of the experiment won't be there, because this is the kind of experiment you run it for almost 5 to 10 days. So the total 10 days, you have to be very careful with all your experiments. So then only you will get a successful experiment. So this has to be mounted in a petri dish. So for this MOCAS, you have a kind of instrument that is called the pressure strain, this pressure gauge strainer. So this will give kind of the outflow facility can be measured directly, but in our existing system we can just you must have seen this here. So this is how the data is retrieved from the software, like with each time point. Then you have, like, you can manipulate like how many time points you can decide how many time points you wanted for the day. So if you want every 5 minutes, you can program it in like every 5 minutes, or if every 10 minutes, then you can have like a program, you can program it in that way. So for this right eye, OD and OS, then you can just go through the like readings, each reading. Then based on that also you can calculate the outflow facility, flow rate divided by this IOP, then that will give you the outflow facility. But this outflow facility strain gauger, so you here you physically measure the outflow facility, that is at the 2 level. This is based on the reference like Barani, like the 1964. Here that will give us the 2 level. Here the in this the pressure, the eye from the incubator is connected to this kind of a pressure weighted gauge. Then this will raise at a two levels, 10 centimeter apart. So this will give a kind of readings like this directly. This will give a outflow facility for each eye. So this goes for at least to 1 hour. So based on this, you can decide about whether the eye is good. So always you need to allow the baseline stabilization, because during death there are many changes happens, and it may block some particles may get blocked into the trabecular meshwork. So in order to acclimatize the eyeball to the laboratory condition, you need to allow them to at least 2 to 3 days. But for in some labs, they used to allow it for 1 week also. So this is the data point, based on the IOP that which I have shown in this. So you can directly plot the graph. So based on that, you can see plots, and you see the difference between the treated as well as the control. And the next one is the POCUS. So this is organ culture. If you use the porcinize, that is called POCUS. But the difference between different species is only the dissection experiment. Dissection technique only that varies between the experiments, but the rest all remain same. And the flow rate. So this is the dissection technique which I have followed it for the POCUS. And this is how the data you get it out of it. So coming to the human organ culture, this is something that, as Kanagaraj mentioned, this is something unique and first of its kind. So this is the system what we have it for the or what we have it at AMRF. So once we receive the whole globe, we bisect it and mount it in the petri dish, and after that you put it in the incubator, and this have the 2 port. One is the media port and the other one is the pressure port. The media port is connected to the pump where the constant flow rate is delivered. The medium is delivered at the constant flow rate, that is 2.5 microliter per minute. The other end of the tube is connected to the pressure transducer, where you record the IOP continuously with the system. So this recording is amplified and documented in the LabPro software. That's a software, inbuilt software comes up with the PowerLab system. This is the system which we established at AMRF. So this the year of establishment, this is the facility which you could see in the picture. We have established in 2012 with the funding from Aravind Eye Foundation. This is the Friends of Aravind, that is the intramural fund which they have donated especially to set up this lab. And we have validated the system with a known actin disruptor, that is latincolin B, that is shortly called LAD-B, and we found the 70% outflow facility, that is increase in outflow facility. This is the same report the similar report which we have, which is reported previously. So why we have set up this laboratory is the first of its kind in India, and here with the help of our Rotary Aravind International Eye Bank, we get the whole globe, which is not possible with several eye banks. So that is the unique in Aravind. So you get the whole globe. This kind of experiment is possible only with the whole globe. So we have a good amount of whole globe in a year, which are not suitable for the corneal transplantation. So we have used those eyes for this kind of an experiment, and which enabled us to get two major grants. One is from SERV, and other very recently this Welcome DBT, where I have used this system for for understanding the pathogenesis, that is the microRNA role in steroid-induced glaucoma. And this is the validation data for this. And I have a small video clips to show our facility. So this is the entrance of the lab, and then you have the Harvard apparatus pump, and this is the CO2 incubator, and this is the anterior segment. There you have the cultures going on, and you can see the two wires, and these are the pressure transducer which we have purchased from Power Lab, and this kind of dome-shaped transducers. And you have this Harvard apparatus in which the constant flow rate has been delivered to keep the tissues alive with the nutrient medium. And this is how you record the readings, and here you could see the number of readings. Here we have set it to every 10 minutes. And this is actually what I have shown here is a week-old eyes with a quad amplifier. Here you have 4 channels and Lab Pro software. So this is how you get the graphs from the readings. And otherwise also you can copy the things and you can do the graph. And this is all this dissection has to be done in sorry for the interjection. Yeah. So this is what I wanted to show you. And because we have an established laboratory, so we have used it for several applications. The first among us, like the screening of anti-glaucoma drugs. As I mentioned earlier, like we have kind of anti-glaucoma drugs in current therapy is like either to decrease the aqueous formation or increase the outflow facility, that is uveoscleral outflow facility. But very few, before the introduction of the Rho kinase inhibitors, we don't have the compounds which are directly working on the affected tissue, that is the trabecular mesh. So after proving this Rho kinase inhibitors, because the Rho kinase signaling has been implicated in the pathogenesis of glaucoma, and Rho kinase inhibitors are known to have a beneficial role in reducing the elevated IOP in glaucoma. So when we have started this experiment, at that time the Ripasudil and Nitrasudil has been in the experimental trial, then later they got approved. So during this time, we have wanted to check the other compound which is available commercially. This is one of its kind, Rho kinase inhibitors, and its role in reducing the intraocular pressure using this perfused human eyes. So I'm not going to much about this. So this Rho kinase is a small GTPase involved in several cellular process. So it is well documented that in glaucoma that Rho signaling has been activated. So if you inhibit this pathway, then you will it will act as a smooth muscle, like a relaxer. So you will get to reduce in IOP. So this is the pathway or signaling. So at a different point, you can block it to get a reduced IOP. So for our experiment, we have planned it in that way. First, we wanted to check the toxicity of the Rho kinase inhibitor, that is the SB77 in the primary HTM cells isolated from the human eye. And we have set up the HOCA system. And as this is the same protocol, we should usually go with like a baseline stabilization for 2 to 3 days, as I have mentioned earlier. So we use paired eyes. So 2.5 microliter per minute, that is a constant flow rate. You deliver the nutrient medium, and once you see the constant stabilization, if the eyes are doing good with the IOP, then you either in one go you treat it with the all right eyes with the drug, and the contralateral eye will act as a vehicle control. It depends upon your protocol, like whether you can keep it for a 24 hours or 1 week time. It depends upon your protocol. So in that, what you look at is the outflow facility, and here we have analyzed the flow pattern with the tracers. That's a Q dot tracers we have used. And in the primary culture, in the same parallelly, we have run it with the cytotoxicity and the Rho activation assay, because once you run this, then you should know that whether the Rho kinase inhibitors inhibit the Rho signaling. So in order to support this, we have run it with the Rho activation assay and other markers which are essential to substantiate the outflow facility. So this is the data which we got with the IOP profile after SB77 treatment. Here you could see this, the red one is the DMS. So because we have used DMS as a vehicle control for SB77 and OD, it is treated with this SB77. So here, this is the normal baseline 1 and 2 at the day 3, we have to give the treatment for both eyes, the respective treatment. So here you could see, as compared to the control eye, vehicle control, you could see a drop in IOP. So this we have documented and calculated the percentage outflow facility. The same way which you could see at the end of the experiment, the anterior segments are collected and we have given the tracers. Then we could see this is without SB77 treatment and with the 77 treatment. With the traces, you could see more traces, that meaning more outflow. That's how this is substantiated with the decrease in IOP. In addition, this MTT assay, and it is evident that the concentrations which we have used is not toxic to the tissue, and whatever we observe, the decrease in outflow facility is purely the drug and not because of the deleterious effect of the Rho kinase inhibitor. And this is to support like whether the SB77 has inhibited the activation of Rho signaling. So this is the Rho activation assay, and we see as compared to the control, and why 27632 is again one more experimental Rho kinase inhibitor, and we have compared, and it inhibited the activation of Rho A with this experimental drug. This is the markers which we have looked at, the F-actin limited, because it acts on the cytoskeleton. So we have just looked at the ECM as well as the cytoskeletal protein, and we found the SB77 did a great job in reducing the IOP as well as the cytoskeletal alteration. And this is how the elevated IOP is reduced with the concentrations what we have used. This is the qPCR data at the mRNA level also we have showed. And in a nutshell, this SB77 was effective in enhancing the outflow facility in an ex vivo focus model, which is consistent with the increase in IOP that's TM thickness. It's also effective in reducing the fibrotic markers, because in glaucoma, so one of the characteristic feature is the is more fibrosis. So the Rho kinase inhibitors are known to reduce the fibrosis, which is due to like TGF beta signaling. That is one point of theory. And so it may be a potential, this SB77 has a potential as a clinical candidate for the management of glaucoma. This has been published in 2018 scientific reports. In the next thing, then I would like to share, it is this ex vivo system is not only used to screen drugs, it can also induce the pathogenesis, like the glaucoma pathogenesis disease model. So here I'm going to show you the steroid-induced ocular hypertension using this model system. So as you all know that the glucocorticoids are known for their potent anti-inflammatory, anti-angiogenic and immunomodulatory property. So it has been mainstay in the management of inflammatory ocular conditions. So, but with the long-term use of glucocorticoids, you have, if you use it for a longer time, in some individuals, they experience the side effects, especially the ocular side effects is the elevated ocular hypertension, elevated IOP or the ocular hypertension. If left untreated, then they will end up in glaucoma. So it is to be addressed at a right time, because the 40% of the population may have a kind of responsiveness that if some proportion of the people respond to steroid side effect is called steroid responders. But in case of the patients with the primary open angle glaucoma, more than 90% of the patients are prone to develop this kind of responsiveness, and so further aggravate their aggravate their condition, like a glaucoma, the optic nerve damage. So it has to be rectified in such a way that you have to identify the sensitive patients who needs long-term therapy, steroids, for example, diabetic macular edema, you need it for a longer time. So if you know the responsiveness beforehand, you can initiate a kind of an alternative strategy, like either low steroid sparing agents can be given, or some alternative treatment can be initiated. So in that scenario, it is very important to understand the pathogenesis. Though this steroid-induced ocular hypertension or a glaucoma share the clinical presentations very similar to the primary open-angle glaucoma, but the molecular pathogenesis is not clearly unknown till now. But these are the types of steroids which we use it for the ocular diseases. Here you see the lot many steroids has been used recently or currently for ocular diseases, for the treatment of various ocular diseases. So as I mentioned earlier, so 40% population will they are susceptible to develop the steroid-induced glaucoma, out of which 6 are likely to develop, 6% are likely to develop the POHE. But at the cellular level, it is well documented that the glucocorticoids, these are the effects which are which the glucocorticoids induce some cellular changes at the cellular level, like cellular effects, ECM metabolism, alterations in the ECM metabolism, different like a reorganization of the gland formation, increased microtubule angles, and altered gene expression. Even at the expression level also, these glucocorticoids are known to induce some changes in the trabecular measure. But the mechanism for which the glucocorticoid induced ocular hypertension leading to glaucoma is not completely understood. So the GC-induced ocular hypertension is not only restricted to humans. You can observe it with the different species also. Here I have given the list of species in which the response rate that is shown here. So for different species, you have the different response rate, and especially at the experimental level, because of the non-availability of the human eyes, some labs use the bovine eyes. But the response rate is 100% for the bovine eyes. So one should remember that the response rate while considering the meaningful observations or considering the results of this kind of experiments, you should consider the response rate, and you have to extrapolate to humans by considering all this informations. So for human, that is the 40%. So it is not only restricted to humans, but it's also for the other species also. Very recently, that glucocorticoid induced ocular hypertension has been documented very long back, that is 1995, in which they have used 100 nanomolar dex, and though that time they have observed a 30% response rate, which is very similar to the clinical 40% response rate. But in the perfusion system, that response rate is very similar to human, and but in bovine it is 100%, as I mentioned earlier. So it is doable that the perfusion cultured eyes do respond for the glucocorticoids. But in order to, our ongoing project on Welcome DBT is about the microRNA, how the microRNAs are playing role in the control in dictating the GC responsiveness. So in the first place, we should know how the Indian eyes are responding to the steroids, that is the dexamethasone. We have used dexamethasone as a candidate drug for the steroid. So we first wanted to check what is the response rate for our Indian eyes, because we don't have any information about the Indian eyes. This has been documented very long back. So we have started with this. So this is how the protocol we have followed it. This is the paired eye we have run it with, and we have stabilization for 2 to 3 days. And after one stabilized, we have treat one eye with 100 nanomolar, and the other eye is the vehicle control. Here we have used 0.1% ethanol as a vehicle control. Then we have recorded the IOP and calculated the outflow facility. At the end of the experiment, usually this anterior segments are perfusion fixed, so that we can analyze the markers or immunohistochemically you can analyze, and various markers or fibrotic markers you can check with. So the conditioned media we have taken for analysis of myocilin and fibronectin. It is known that the DEX induces myocilin and fibronectin protein from the trabecular these are the known DEX-inducible proteins with dexamethasone. So we have checked in the conditioned medium, and once after that's the fixed anterior segments, we have investigated the morphological, we have done the morphological analysis, and the immunofluorescence with the alpha SMA, collagen. These are the known markers which are known to be altered with the DEX treatment. So we have, based on this IOP response, we have categorized the eyes as a GC responder and a non-responder. Here you could see the criteria. If the delta change in IOP more than 5 mmHg, if the eyes showed delta change in IOP for more than for 7 days, they are called GC responder or responsive eyes. And if it is less than 5 mmHg, it is called non-responsive eyes. Based on this, we have categorized and analyzed. This is how the workup of the this anterior segment culture. So in the first, to study the responsiveness in our Indian eyes, we have used around 46 eyes, out of which the 8 are paired eyes and 30 single eyes. with a mean age of 70.9 plus or minus 13.2, and the mean elapsed time, because it is very important that the enucleation time below 5 hours are much more suitable for this kind of experiment. So whatever we have used, this 46 eyes, that was between this 2 point is within 4 hours. So, and we have documented this mean elapsed time between enucleation and the culture. So, the number of eyes out of 46 eyes, that 13 eyes received here, though we have run paired eyes, but in some occasions, the paired eye may not behave may not behave similarly. So you have to take it as a single eye data. So that's why we have put it in such a way that the number of eyes received ethanol and the number of eyes received 100 nanomolar. And here we have studied 2 different doses to see whether this dose dependent increase in response rate. So for that, if you increase the dose, 5-fold dose, whether are we getting the increase in the response rate also. But interesting to note that we didn't see any dose dependent response rate. Rather, we have seen a reduction in the response rate. This is the outflow facility. This is the IOP, mean delta IOP graph. Here you could see this is 100 nanomolar, the eyes treated with 100 nanomolar dex, and this is the GC responder eyes. These 2 categories are called the GC responder eyes with the different doses. And here the blue ones are this ethanol treated eyes, and here the black one is this is the black one, and the blue ones are called the ethanol treated eyes for the responder and the non-responder eyes. Here you could see clearly this 100 nanomolar treated like the responder, the out of 16, 7 showed 6 eyes showed out of 16 eyes, 6 eyes showed elevated IOP, significant elevated IOP that was calculated to be 37.5% response rate. But in case of 500 nanomolar, we could see a reduction in the response rate. We didn't see dose dependent increase in response rate. That's what, like 23.5. So this is to show that IOP and outflow facility with the individual data points. This is the cumulative of, or here you could see the number of eyes which have used for this graph, and here the individual data point, individual eye, each dot represent the individual eyes for this flow. And here is the outflow facility. IOP and outflow facility is the inversely proportional. So you could either the decrease in IOP, let's say elevated outflow facility, or increased resistance. And we have checked how the morphology looks like. So once it is documented that there are more cell debris or that they correlate with the ECM extracellular matrix proteins. But when you look at the HNE, that HNE won't tell you much about the extracellular matrix. You just see the patency of the trabecular meshwork. And here the marked region is called trabecular meshwork and Slum's canal. And here you could see the DEX treated eyes showed more debris than the ethanol treated. And we have run the tunnel assay to check the viability of the tissue. Even after 10 days also, the viability is still preserved. And the trabecular meshwork cells are, there is no much toxicity with the dose which we have used for the study. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, this myosilin and the fibronectin or the known DEX-inducible proteins. So we have checked at the immunohistochemical immunofluorescence analysis. So this is the ethanol treated, and this is from the responder eye, and this is from the non-responder eye. It is interesting to note that the responder eyes showed more myosilin expression as compared to the non-responder eyes. The same way with the fibronectin, and this is the negative control to check the experimental flow. So this is something interesting we found, like this is the first time we as per the literature, it is known that the DEX is known to induce this proteins, but they didn't differentiate between the responder and the non-responder eyes. But here we have documented that the pattern of expression like a myocillin and fibronectin between the responder and the non-responder eyes. So to summarize this part, this DEX treatment induces elevated IOP in isolated perfusion controlled human eyes. The observed GC response rate was found to be 37 in case of 100 nanomolar DEX group and 23.5% in 500 nanomolar DEX group, and it is comparable to the previous studies, that is the Clark et al. As well as the clinical findings. So the elevated IOP is also substantiated with the morphological and biological changes. So we have published this very recently, like in the Jan, we have received this publication to show this model is working for our ongoing research, and whatever the response rate which is reported earlier, also the same percentage we are also getting it in our laboratory condition. So with this, we have there's some experiments are going on with by using this model. We have taken the RNA sequencing from the tissues isolated from the anterior segment once after the HOCAS is over, and we have analyzed the RNAs as well as the miRNAs which are differentially altered with the DEX treatment, and we have come up with a list of differentially expressed microRNAs. That work is going on now. Yet another this disease induction model is biomechanical stress. It is well documented that the ocular pulse, that is the difference. One school of thought believes that glaucoma is a vascular disease, a vascular pathology disease. If there is a change in like a pressure related issues in the normal peripheral or any cardiac rhythm or something, that will affect the glaucoma, that will affect the trabecular meshwork. As you know that the systolic and the diastolic induce some kind of a pulse which is sensed by the trabecular meshwork, that is called the ocular pulse. If there is any abnormal ocular pulse that is sensed by the trabecular meshwork, because the trabecular meshwork acts as a pressure sensing or the biomechanical stress sensing system in the eye. So it will respond based on the stress response, and based on that the outflow facility and the echosumer dynamic system is altered. So this is this project was funded by SERB, in which we have demonstrated that the cyclic IOP, which is we have experimentally created this difference in the systolic and diastolic, like pathological ocular pulse, that is called biomechanical stress to the trabecular meshwork, and we wanted to see whether the whatever we are delivering through the pump, whether that the trabecular meshwork in the HOCA system is responding. If so, there is a belief that the cyclic IOP activates the Rho signaling. That is how the trabecular meshwork is affected. So we have demonstrated experimentally. So this is the system which we have used. This is the normal HOCA system. Instead, here we have used two pumps. This is a one normal pump in which the a normal flow rate like a 2.5 microliter is given. Once after stabilization, like stabilization for 2 to 3 days, and we have introduced this pulsatile blood pump. This delivers a kind of, this mimics a kind of a systolic and diastolic of our heart. So we have given the pulsation for 8 hours and observed the changes in the trabecular meshwork after the HOCAS experiment. Here you could see this is the normal. This is the dish. This is the human anterior segment which have received a pulsation for 8 hours. Here we have used 4 mm Hg per second. So this is how you see the pulse for 8 hours we have given, and this is the normal flow rate. and we could show that there was an activation of, in the interest of time, I didn't show much about the findings of this, and I have just given the key findings. So in this we could demonstrate that the application of the cyclic pulse induce changes in the trabecular meshwork and activates the Rho signaling by after SB77 treatment, that is the Rho kinase inhibitor. The increased outflow resistance, the cyclic mechanical stress effects were blocked by the Rho kinase inhibitor. So this is one key finding which we could show that this is there any biomechanical stress contribute to trabecular meshwork, the trabecular meshwork alterations. That's how the increased elevated IOP. So this is have the potential to study the disease mechanism also, not only the Rho signaling. You can study n number of signaling pathway by giving various mechanical or different stress conditions you can create with the system. So this we have published in 2020. And this is one interesting area which we are working now with our collaborator, colleague here. So that is the stem cell based therapies. So there is a belief that there is a loss in stem cell in glaucoma, especially the trabecular meshwork stem cells. So in this system, we wanted to create a stem cell loss or the cell loss model in the trabecular meshwork. So first we have established the cell loss model in the HOCA system, and once it is successful, we have delivered, we have applied, we have given the TM cells cultured, or the stem cells cultured in the trabecular stem cell medium, the trabecular meshwork cells cultured in the stem cell medium. So we have introduced that cells into the anterior segment, and we have seen the homing effect, homing of the injected stem cells or the injected TM cells into the trabecular meshwork in the HOCAs, and we have seen some encouraging results. So you can create these cell loss. This is how the protocol we have designed. So baseline stabilization, and we have treated with saponin, that is a known agent which induces cell loss in the HOCAS model, which has been reported earlier. So this was a collaborative project with our colleague Dr. Babu Priya. And here you could see this is the saponin treated. We have treated both eyes with the saponin, and we found that in one set of experiment, we found that the saponin treatment created a cell loss, which is comparable with the reported literature. And it does not only creates a cell loss, as the cell loss is also associated with the elevated IOP. And once after we established this, we have injected the TM cells. There's a transplanted cells with Q dot, so that we can trace it where these cells are homed into the host tissue, that is the trabecular meshwork tissue in HOCAS. So we found that the observed elevated IOP with the saponin treatment was reduced by the application of a TM cells. We haven't published it, so this is some copyright reservation. So these results are so encouraging, and some of the experiments and validation part is also we are running through. So obviously any system will have a kind of a pros and cons, and the major limitation for this organ cultured anterior segment is the availability of the tissue. Even if only for this system you have to sacrifice a big animal like bovine or monkey, but this bovine, pig, monkey eyes can be easily get from the local slaughterhouse. But in case of human eyes are very few, as I mentioned earlier. Very few eye banks have the feasibility to isolate the whole globe for a transplantation. In some cases, they isolate only the cornea for transplantation. So if the eye bank fully support this kind of research, then only you can perform this experiment. And the availability also matters, and the freshness of the tissue. As I mentioned earlier, the enucleation time greatly matters with the success of the experiment. So if it is below 4 hours, then at least you can get some reliable results, and you the experimental rejection is limited. And high cost involved. This kind of experiments involve a lot of money. Even in US, I have been told that they get a pair of eyes for USD to like 1,500 per pair. So that's why in many US labs they are not able to afford this, and the consumables are really costly. In India, as far as the tubings and culture dishes, you're not getting, because I'm the only sole customer for them, and they are not ready to purchase for me. So I usually get it from UW. For that, the Dr. Kaufman was very kind enough to do this. They are helping me to purchase the chemicals which are essential for the Hoppers experiment. And obviously this kind of experiment is so time consuming, and you need a lot of patience. Whenever you get the eye, you have to sit with the eye, and you have to process the eye and mount it. At least it will take 3 to 4 hours to mounting, and then every day you need to remove the air bubbles, and you have to set the eyes in a proper condition. If you the flow rate and everything has to be monitored. Recording, whether you have to cross check every time all the recordings are going in a proper way, and in between is there any interruptions like that. And at the end of, at least you can terminate the experiment at the level of the baseline stabilization. If any eye which is not stabilized within 3 days, or even you can allow it for 4 days, and it is no more suitable for this kind of experiment, so you can terminate at that point. Otherwise, you can continue with the experiment. So for this kind of ex vivo experiment, it is ideal to work in the IOP range, eyes with 10 mm to 15 mm Hg, because here the episcleral venous pressure is lagging, so that adds 8 mm to this pressure. So in order to compensate with the normal pressure, that is 21 mm Hg, so it is better to work in this range to get your reliable results. And the equipment, it needs a kind of complicated, some people may look it as a complicated system, like there are more of wires and tubes and things like that. So it need a special quad amplifier, and you need to calibrate all the time the transducers, everything is working all right and things like that. And really need a skilled person, the person with more patience as well as the skill, because for each point you need, then they have to dissect properly without distributing the other structures, and the more skill is required. And high experimental rejection, as I mentioned earlier, that's a freshness of the tissue matters a lot. So even if you run it with that experiment, and then end of the experiment, if you collect the data and do it, and they out of the range. So most of the time, the success rate, whatever we have experienced over the past 11 years, we could see 60 to 70%. It has never been 80% or 100%. So more, at least in order to get some data, 10 pairs reliable data, for that you at least you have to run around 15 to 18 pairs, which is a lot more number for in terms of money as well as in terms of time and things. And this have some kind of like one aspect of pathogenesis, glaucoma pathogenesis cannot be studied with us, because the immunopathogenesis, something, if glaucoma is inflammatory disease, so if you want to derive any conclusion based on that, because this is not associated with systemic circulation, because this is an isolated preparation, so anything related to immunology, immune cells, or how the host behaves to the like the immunological response to the eye, that cannot be studied with the system. So these are my team. These are the people who are very much behind this success for they have helped me to come for, for my travel. So a special thanks to Dr. Kaufman, Professor B.R.M., who has been instrumental in setting up this facility, and Dr. Kaufman and B.N. Gabelt, they have helped me a lot in learning, they have given me an extensive training. So the special thanks to Bian. She was with me for the whole experiment, and even that long hours of long evening, and even in weekends, every time she was with me. And here we have the special glaucoma, steroid glaucoma team. Our current director, the Professor K. Dharmalingam, and our glaucoma clinicians, S.R. Krishnadas and Dr. R. Shambila. We have a collaborator from UK, that's a Professor Colin Willoughby. So he has been our advisor and collaborator, international collaborator for this steroid glaucoma project. And here our AMRF colleague, Dr. Gauri Priya and Varnidharan. Varnidharan, for Welcome DBT, has been doing the bioinformatic analysis, and these are my research students who have contributed a lot for this kind of experiments, and without them I couldn't come up this much. So special to mention Ashwin, Dr. Hari, Madhumitra, Kadiril, and our lab technician. So, and funding agency, they were generous enough to provide funding for this kind of research. And but least this Rotary Aravind International Eye Bank, they have provided a good number of, whenever I asked them this number of eyeballs I wanted for my experiments. So they are not at all hesitant to do that, and they try to help us in running these experiments so successfully. Thank you so much for the patient listening. If you have any questions, please.
Thank you for the wonderful talk, ma'am. I think there are some questions, so if you can.
Yeah.
Are you able to?
Yeah. So. There is a question from Aishwarya Radhakrishnan. What is the role of pyridoxine HCl in perfusion medium? So this is basically a vitamin which is essential for the nutrient medium. And how do you calibrate the difference between living and the cadaveric eyes? There are some limitations for living as well as the cadaveric eyes, but to some extent the drug behavior, the toxicity profile, if you use the human eyes, we can easily translate your to the living eyes to some extent. But for other species, there is definitely a species difference that has to be considered, even anatomically as well as the physiologically. There are some differences among the species, so that has to be considered while really for the translation part. Subrata Chakrabarti, and have you been successful in culturing human TM cells from surgical specimens? We have tried, but we were not able to get the TM cells. But basically, it is only the sclera. Anonymous Certainty, thank you for the interesting talk. Thank you so much for your feedback. And Nirmal J, what is the reason from decrease in response with the increase in dose? Actually, that's increasing, that's glucocorticoids response is basically through the receptor activation. Once the ligand bind with the glucocorticoid receptor, and it is also concentration dependent. So if you increase the dose beyond its capacity, obviously you may be knowing that the saturation of the receptor happens. This is how you happen to see a decrease in response. So the question from the same person, ma'am, there are other Rho kinase inhibitors too, why choose to SB77? So yes, obviously there are so many Rho kinase inhibitors. We found that it has been proven in other system, like there is some information is available prior to this use. So we have chosen, and we wanted to see some positive response in our system. That's why we have chosen this. And Manisha Malini, can this type of model be used for studying optic nerve damage, also using whole globe? In some labs, they use whole eye perfusion also. Instead of anterior segment, they use the whole globe and perfuse it in some through the optic nerve and keep the tissue alive. But optic nerve damage is better studied in the animal model than this perfusion system, because there are a lot of complications. Because the donor eyes, you have the shrunken optic nerve, so you may not be able to see the patent optic nerve in the cadaveric eyes. So that is one major disadvantage. You may not be knowing whether it is due to death or it is due to the experiment. Like practical experiment with the optic nerve damage in the perfusion culture system is not that much interesting. What type of stem cells used? Riaz Khan. This is something our collaborator has given, because we don't want to see the biased result, so they have given. It is basically derived from the trabecular meshwork cells. So one question from Nirmal again. So how will stem cell of trabecular meshwork will help in regeneration? What is the method to incorporate them? So I think from clinical point of view, he must have asked. So in the experimental level, there is a school of thought, like with the aging, because of the loss of stem cell in the trabecular meshwork stem cell, the glaucoma, because this glaucoma is age-related diseases. So there is a loss in the stem cell as well in the trabecular meshwork. That's why the glaucoma is more in the trabecular, or the trabecular meshwork tissue is the function of the trabecular meshwork is compromised with a lot of insults because of the aging and other factors. If you inject the stem cells or the cells like a TM cells or the enriched medium, then the regeneration happens. The regeneration of trabecular meshwork cells, so that it will help in the normal functioning, so that the homeostasis, it regularize the homeostasis of the IOP. I think I have answered the right question, like I have answered correctly. So in the continuation of this Nirmal's questions, how it should be injected. For perfusion system, you can directly inject into the anterior segment, and for human, obviously you can go for injection into the eye. So Manisha Malani, how do you measure the IOP pressure using some electrodes or some other? As I have shown in my picture, you must remember, there are some pressure transducers that pressure transducers are connected to the amplifier. So the amplifier records each readings. So from each reading, we calculate the IOP. So this is the continuous process.
Ma'am, there was one question actually. They have asked why the baseline outflow is in the negative percentage in some of the graphs.
Yeah, actually there's a change in, because once you get to the baseline, there are some sort of calculations, like the baseline, contralateral baseline of the particular eye, and that has to be normalized with the contralateral eye. So if you do a kind of, suppose if you start with, so you have around 12 or something, then over the period of time, it can reduce also, it can increase also and stabilize in some point of time. So the initial pressure is usually not considered, but at the for the sake of normalization, you calculate in such a way, so 1 minus like a test I divided by the control I into 100, that will give you a change in outflow facility. These are all the normalized IOP. In some mice you will get the negative percentage also. Like MTT assay, even in the MTT assay also you will get a minus percentage. Or otherwise you have to take it as a 0.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think all the questions are answered. So thank you very much once again for sharing your experience with all our users. And we hope this information will definitely help the researchers who are working in the similar field.
Yeah, my special thanks to the participants for the patience listening. So I hope this is more informative, and if you have any questions apart from this also, you can write to me so that I'll try to answer it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And thanks again for all the participants for your patience listening and encouragement as always.
Yes,
Thank you. Have a good day.
at this point of time at least.
Yeah. Take care and stay safe.
Bye to everyone.